Isn't it amazing how fast time goes when you're doing something you enjoy doing? When you're greeting people or baking cookies or whatever it is you enjoy doing, time goes by so quickly. But when you're waiting for something, did you notice how that minute that I timed after you came back to your seat seemed to take a lot longer than the minute greeting people? Exact same period of time. But when we're waiting, it seems to take forever. Did you know, I know Cassie knows this, but did you know there are only 21 days until Christmas? If we say that Christmas starts at midnight on the 25th, that means that we have a little under 518 hours until we celebrate the birth of Christ. That translates into approximately 31,080 minutes. And we've got a lot of things to do before that time arrives. We've got decorations still to put up. How many still have decorations to put up? How many have already got them all done? Okay, you're a little bit ahead of the game, all right? We've got presents to buy. We've got cards to send. We've got parties to attend. We've got goodies to bake. In fact, I want you to start thinking about what you're going to bring on the evening of the 17th. That's going to be our annual Christmas Carol and Skit Night. And afterwards, we're going to celebrate by eating some Christmas goodies. So decide what you can bring, Christmas cookies, Christmas pie, whatever it is is your Christmas specialty. We want you to make enough to share with the rest of us. I'm hoping somebody will bring some fudge. Now, everybody will bring fudge. Just remember, I don't like nuts, okay? So it's got to be nut-free fudge, okay? Other people do, though, so you can do nuts for them. And if I have to, I can cut them out of mine. You don't have to do everything for the pastor, all right? So many things to do, only so many minutes to do it, and I wasted one of those minutes this morning by standing here looking at my watch. Today we're kicking off a brand new series for Christmas. I've titled this series, The Miracle of Christmas. Now, actually, I could have probably called it The Miracles of Christmas, because each week we're going to take one of 4 of the miracles of Christmas and talk about that miracle. There's actually hundreds and hundreds of miracles that happened around Christmas time, the first Christmas. Some of them are very obvious when we read the Christmas story, and some of them aren't quite so obvious. So we're going to talk about a few of the less obvious miracles. So this is week 1 of the miracle of Christmas, and today we're going to look at the miracle of the moment. Have you ever stopped to think about how important timing is on everything? Do you plant tomatoes in November? Do you paint the outside of your house in January? Maybe if you're living in California. Not a wise thing to do here in Yakima. I used to be a painting contractor in Tri-Cities. I know there were times of the year we moved inside and didn't do outside stuff. Do you go swimming outside in February? Well, not unless you're part of the Polar Bear Club. Then you do, but most of us, no. We go inside pools in February. Why don't you do those things at that time of the year? It's not the right time. It's the wrong season. Solomon talked about that in Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verse 1. He says, there is a time for everything and a season for every activity under the heavens. Everything we do takes time. And often there is a particular time when that activity should take place. Sometimes we can force things to happen at other times, but if we wait for the proper time, it's going to be a lot easier and we're going to be a lot more productive. Sometimes all it takes for timing to be off is a split second. If something's off by 1 split second, it can make all the difference in the world. Think about the importance of timing in sports. If the timing is off, the quarterback won't connect with his receiver for a completion. If the timing is off, the basketball player will arrive at the spot before the ball or after the ball has already passed. Think about the importance of timing in our daily lives. If you've ever missed a flight because you arrived 1 minute after boarding, you know how important timing is. If you have a toddler, you know that it only takes 1 minute for you to turn your head the other direction, for that toddler to be off and into something that they shouldn't be into. A minute really is not that much time. Or how many accidents have been caused because somebody took their eyes off the road for just a couple of seconds to check a text message or to take care of a screaming child in the back seat or whatever it is. Time goes. It doesn't stop. And it doesn't take long to miss an opportunity. Does 1 minute make a difference? Ask those who made it out of the Twin Towers just seconds before the towers collapsed. Timing is everything. Galatians chapter 4:4 is our key verse for today. In Galatians 4:4 at 4 and 5 it says, "But when the set time had fully come, God sent his Son, born of a woman, born under the law, to redeem those under the law, that we might receive the adoption to sonship." When the set time had fully come. Christ was not born at the time he was born by coincidence. God had preordained that. He had set that up from the beginning of creation. He had an exact time. And when the set time had fully come, that's when Christ came. When God created time, he already knew that his created beings, Adam and Eve, would sin. He, in his unlimited wisdom, knew the exact moment that they would sin. And he had already preordained a future time for his Son Jesus to come and pay the penalty for that sin. He didn't just pick a random time. He picked the perfect time. At just the right time, God sent his Son. That represents the miracle of the moment. How many of you like Christmas movies? Anybody like to watch those Hallmark Christmas movies? Each week during this series of messages for the next four weeks, we're going to be showing 1 or 2 clips from a Christmas movie that a lot of you have probably seen. And we're doing this because it's going to tie in with our message, in some way illustrate the point that I'm trying to bring up. And the movie I've chosen to use is The Miracle at 34th Street. So we're going to be showing 1 or 2 clips each week to tie in. You say, well, why would you show a movie like that in church? Why don't you show a Christian movie? Well, Jesus, when he was here on earth, spoke often in parables. Parables were simply a story using something in nature or telling a story about an individual. They weren't true stories. His story of the Good Samaritan wasn't a true story. The story of the prodigal son wasn't a true story. But it was a story that people could relate to. And he'd tell the story, and then he'd say, okay, now let's put a spiritual application to this because people remember stories. So I'm using this movie as a modern-day parable. Okay? And a lot of you will be watching the movie this Christmas, and these points that we bring out from the movie, when it comes out, I want you to remember back to the sermon and how that relates to a spiritual application, okay? And some of them I'm stretching a little bit to get the application, okay? But still, same thing. When you see it, you're going to remember, oh, yeah, I remember Pastor Jerry preached on that. Hopefully. Hopefully you'll remember that, okay? So, in case you aren't familiar with the movie, you've never seen it, it's the story of a man named Kris Kringle who believes he is Santa Claus. He wants others to believe in him as well. It's a fictional story, but there are great parallels that I want to use to tie into the message. So, if you focus your attention to the screen, here's today's clip. Did any of you notice the miracle in that clip? How many saw the miracle? Raise your hand. Justin, but I think we've talked about it. That's okay. Most of the people in the story didn't see the miracle. Even Mrs. Walker didn't recognize the miracle. Was it just by chance or coincidence that Kris Kringle was at the parade that day? Did that just happen? Or did he know what was going to happen at the parade? Did he know that they were going to need a Santa Claus? Did he just happen to be there at the right time to save not only the parade, but to save Miss Walker's job? See, a lot of things happen and we just think, oh, weren't we lucky? Wasn't that a good coincidence? Most things in life, in fact, I should say nothing in life, happens by coincidence. Sometimes it happens because we've made a poor choice or we haven't followed through. Sometimes there are bad things that happen that are our fault. Same thing, if we do the right things, it can make a better life. But nothing happens just by chance. God set up a perfect universe where things happen. If we are in his plan and doing things according to his plan, things are happening the way he preordained them. But God also knows that we're not always going to do the right thing, like Adam and Eve. That wasn't his choice that they sinned. That God said, you know what, I'm going to be prepared for that, and I'm going to intersect at the right moment, and I'm going to make things right. The miracle of the moment. God intersecting our life at just the right time. It may not be the time when we thought he should. We may have wanted him 6 months earlier or 6 years earlier. God, why didn't you come when I called? And he says, it wasn't the right moment. I'm going to wait for the perfect timing. The whole Jewish nation was anticipating the coming of the Messiah. But the miracle finally came to pass in a way that most people missed it. Some of them knew that a little baby was born in a stable in Bethlehem, but they didn't recognize the significance of that. They missed the miracle of the moment because they weren't prepared and they weren't looking for a miracle at that time. There were some people that knew about it. Of course, Mary and Joseph, they recognized the miracle because the angel had announced it to them. Mary's aunt Elizabeth and Uncle Zachariah, they recognized it, but again, they had a divine intervention. The shepherds knew about it, but to most people, it was overlooked. They didn't recognize the miracle of the moment. It says, when the time had fully come, God's preordained time. Why did God pick that specific time in history? Why didn't he come 1,500 years earlier? Why didn't he come 500 years later? Why did he pick that specific time? We think any time would have been as good as any other, or actually prior to that, earlier than that, probably would have been a better time. If I was God, earlier would have been a better time. But God said, no, this is the perfect time. Historians tell us that the timing was perfect for a lot of reasons. That was the time, the first point in history where the world was prepared for the expansion of the gospel message. Now, I mean, right after the garden, before there were very many people, I mean, that could have been a good time, but, you know, as the populations grew and people scattered to different parts of the earth and stuff, and languages were diversified, that was the perfect opportunity for the gospel, for the message of this baby that grew up to be the Messiah, to go forth. All of the world at that time was united under one common language. They had their own languages, but they were all united primarily. Greek was the spoken language that everybody understood. So the message could go out in a language that everyone could understand. The Romans had constructed roads and a great shipping empire so that every city and every nation was connected, made it perfect to spread that message that the Messiah had come. The entire Roman world was in great expectation, waiting for a deliverer. It wasn't just the Jews that were waiting for a deliverer. There were other nations that had been conquered by the Romans too, and they were waiting. And at that time, it was just kind of this understanding that, you know, you have a ruler that rules for a while until a stronger ruler comes and overthrows that one, and then that one rules for a while, and then that one, you know, and everybody was waiting for the perfect ruler. At some point, a better ruler is going to come and usher us into a better way of life. So even though they may not have been waiting for the Messiah, they were waiting for a deliverer, for a better leader. Old religions were dying. The philosophies that have been taught for years have been found empty and powerless to change men's lives. Boy, we're back in that time again now. There are lots of philosophies and theories and religions and ideas. But when people get into them, they find out this is empty. It can't really change my life. There's only one philosophy, and it's not just a philosophy. It is the way, the truth, and the life. Old religions were dying. Religious bankruptcy and spiritual hunger were everywhere. God was preparing the world for the arrival of his Son. All of the Old Testament prophecies concerning the coming of the Messiah were complete. Well, of course, because God already knew what time it was going to happen. He knew when those things would come to pass. The Roman Empire had actually helped prepare the world for the birth of Jesus. The miracle happened at just the right moment. But very few people recognized it. They missed the miracle of the moment. They were too busy with all of the activities of life to recognize what God was doing. They had their own problems, their own ideas, their own theories of what the miracle would look like when it came. And so when it actually came, they missed the miracle of the moment. We all have miracles that we're praying for. We all have things that we want to see happen. But rarely do those things happen on our time schedule. Have you noticed that? We have all these things we want. We have things, miracles in our lives. We say, God, I want this. God, I need this. And it doesn't seem to happen when we think it should happen. Next week, we're going to be talking about the miracle of the method that God chose. Because not only does God not usually do things in our timing, he also usually doesn't do them the way that we think they should be done. Isaiah chapter 55 verse 9 says, as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than yours, and my thoughts than yours. God has his own timing and has his own way of doing things. But the good news is God always comes at just the right moment. And at that right moment, he always gives us exactly what we need. It may not be what we thought we needed, but he says, okay, you asked for this. I've waited because it wasn't the right time. Now is the time for your miracle, but it's not going to look anything like you thought it should have looked because I've got something better for you. God's never early. He's never late. He's always right on time. Listen to these promises from God's word that talk about God's timing. There are more. I just picked out a few of them. Psalms 145, verse 15. The eyes of all look to you, and you give them their food at the proper time. Psalm 104, 27. All creatures look to you to give them their food at the proper time. Deuteronomy 11:14. Then I will send rain on your land in its season, both autumn and spring rains, so that you may gather in your grain, new wine, and olive oil. I'll give it to you at the right season. I don't know what you're going through right now in your life. I don't know what kind of miracles you've been praying for, what it is that you need God to do for you. And you may think God's not listening. I mean, a lot of the Jewish nation had given up on the Messiah. You know, we've been waiting for so long, it's just really not going to happen. It's a fairy tale. Don't give up. God will show up at just the right time. He knows when the perfect timing is for you to receive your miracle. At just the right time, he will provide exactly what you need. He'll provide it at the perfect moment. And as I already said, your miracle may not always look exactly the way you thought it was going to look, but it will be better than what you expected. And it'll be better than what you could come up with if you did it on your own. I've shared this before, so a lot of you heard this story, but I want to share it once again because I think it fits this moment. After Mindy and I had been married for 3 years, we decided we wanted to start trying to have a family. Wasn't too long after that, Mindy had a tubal pregnancy, and we thought, well, okay, that's fine. We'll have another one. Well, 7 years went by, no children. We started going in to have some testing done and found out in the testing process that Mindy wasn't ovulating. They tested her like 3 months in a row, and she didn't ovulate any of those 3 months. And doctor said, well, apparently you must ovulate sometimes because you had that tubal pregnancy, but you're not ovulating regularly. So we started putting her on fertility drugs, which are supposed to force the ovulation process. And every month our hopes to get up. Okay, this month we're going to get pregnant. This month, and it wouldn't be a bummer, it'd be a letdown and stuff. And finally we said, we just got to put it in God's hands. God knows our desire. He knows we want to have a family. It's God's timing. It's God's will, not ours. And maybe it's not God's will. Maybe that's something we want, but maybe that's not really God's will for our life. We were children's pastors. We had 100 plus kids every Sunday, and we said, maybe this is our family, these kids. So we just said, God, we trust you with our lives. We're going to put it in your hands, whatever you want. If you want us never to have children, we are okay with that, God. We just want to be in your will. Well, that's easy to say, and we had adjusted to that. We were okay with that, but still deep down inside, we wanted a family of our own. One Christmas, it was just before Christmas, we were talking to our pastor in Richland and said, Christmas just isn't cutting it for us anymore. It's been okay, just the two of us, but we want children that we can share Christmas with. We'd really love to have a family of our own. It would be more Christmas if we had kids to enjoy it with. Anybody relate to that? And he prayed with us right there. This was, I think, at the Christmas Eve service, if I remember correctly, the Christmas Eve service of the church, and we prayed together. And I think it was the very next week, he called us in. And he said, I need to talk to you guys. We came in. He said, my sister is the counselor at a church in California. And he said, she just had a young mother come to her in the church. This gal grew up in the church, was a very heavily involved in the church. And about a year ago, her husband left her, filed for divorce, wants nothing to do with her, and she was devastated. So she gave up on God. She gave up on the church. And she said, you know what? If this is the way God's going to treat me, I don't want anything to do with God. So she just started going out and just living her life without God, met a prominent businessman in the community, and it started having an affair with this prominent man. A small community. Everybody knew everybody. This man was well known in the whole community. Started having an affair with this man. He was married to someone else. But after a while, she decided, this isn't right. I know better than this. I need to recommit my life to Christ. So she went back to church, told God she's sorry, called the guy she's having the affair with, said, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm getting back with God. Started back on the right track, and 2 weeks later found out she was pregnant with this man's baby. Her ex-husband said, it's not my child. I'm going to have nothing to do with it. I'll come pick up my 2 kids, and we'll go out and do stuff together. I have nothing to do with that child. That's not my child. The father of the baby-to-be said, we can't let this get out. I'm too well known in the community. If anybody found out that I had this affair, this could devastate my career. I could lose all my customers. This is not going to happen. You need to abort that child. Well, because of her newfound faith and trust, she said, I can't. I just don't feel I can take a child's life. I can't abort the baby, but I have no job. I have no husband. I'll have no father for the child. This child won't understand why my other 2 kids have a father and he doesn't or she doesn't. So she said, do you know of anybody out of state that would be willing to adopt my child? And she put this stipulation that it has to be a Christian family. I want my child raised in a Christian home. Do you know of anybody out of state? So our pastor's sister called him, asked, he brought it to us. You said you wanted kids. Would you consider adopting this child? We prayed about it. The other caveat was it was going to be an open adoption. The mother of the child wanted to know where the child was going. So it was going to be an open adoption, and we weren't really totally comfortable with that. But we just felt like God was saying, you need to do this. So we made contact first through our pastor's sister, and then finally started talking to Wendy, the mother of the child, and started working towards the process of adopting her little baby. And we started sending her money every month because she didn't have a job. We started sending her money every month to help cover her medical bills. And we had made arrangements that when it was time to deliver the baby, she was going to come up. We had made arrangements with some friends in the church. She was going to come stay with them for that month before the baby was born so that the baby could be delivered there in our town, and she'd be there and stuff, and she'd stay for a little bit, and then she'd go back home. Working through it all. Everything was working like clockwork. We're in God's plan. This is God. This is how God's going to provide family for us. And we were okay with it. God's working a miracle. But God says, no, I have a bigger miracle. You think that's the miracle, but I have a bigger one. Part of the process for adopting, if you've ever adopted, is you have to have physicals. So we went in for our physicals, found out Mindy was pregnant. And when we first talked to Wendy, she was concerned about that. She was afraid that was going to happen. She said, my biggest fear is you'd start to adopt my child, and then you'd get pregnant, and then you wouldn't want my baby anymore. We said, no, Wendy, that won't happen. We said, first off, we've been at this for 7 years. Mindy doesn't ovulate. Doctors told us we're probably never going to have children of our own. That is, that's like, a 1 in 1,000. That's way out there. It's not going to happen. Well, it happened. So we called up Wendy, said, Wendy, we got some news we got to share with you. And we told her that we found out Mindy was pregnant. And her first response was, oh, no, I was afraid of this. We said, Wendy, it's okay. Don't worry about it. We think God has brought us together. This is still a God thing. And we said, we still want to adopt your child. The 2 babies will be about 5 to 6 months apart. And that's okay. It'll be just like raising twins. We can handle this, Wendy. We're not going back on it. We've started this. God knows what he's doing. We're going to continue down this path. And that's where we left it. About 10 days later, Wendy called. She said, I need to talk to you guys. She said, I've been thinking a lot about the miracle that God is working for you guys. She said, I've had this whole list of reasons why I could not take care of this child. He doesn't have a father, or at least not one that he would know. My ex-husband wants nothing to do with him. I don't have any money. Don't know how I'll even pay for the delivery, let alone raising this child. She said, I have so many excuses why I can't take care of this child. But she says, God is working a great miracle for you guys. Doctor said you'd probably never have a baby of your own, and God's giving you a baby. That is a great miracle. And she says, God has spoken to me over this last week and told me, Wendy, you need to believe that I can work a miracle for you too. She says, God's doing such an amazing thing for you. God has a miracle for me. Would it be okay if I kept my baby? We said, yes, that would be fine. If anything changes, call us, let us know. That is fine. Before the baby was even born, Wendy met a nice Christian man. They started dating. Shortly after the baby was born, they got married. He adopted the child, and they've had at least 2 more since. God had a miracle for us, but God said the time is not now. Because if we had had a child of our own, we never would have talked to Wendy. We never would have been able to help Wendy through a tough time in her life. And God says, I want to bless you. I want to give you a miracle, but I want your miracle to also be a blessing to someone else. I want to work 2 miracles at the same time. So he didn't tell us, but he said, no, I've got your miracle, but it's not now. Let's wait. Let's wait for a greater miracle. Let's wait for a better time. I know what you need. Trust me. I want to work the miracle at the right moment. And after that, we had no trouble having babies. God did something. God changed something. God said, okay, I'm working this miracle. You did what I wanted you to do. You allowed me to work through you for this miracle. And now, pretty soon we had to say, God, enough is enough. We're going to do something about this, God. I know that there are people here in this room this morning that have been praying for years for a miracle. Some of you have told me your stories. You don't understand why it's not happening. I wish I had an answer for you. I wish I could tell you. All I can do is encourage you by saying, God knows what you need. God will come through at the perfect time. And when he does, it's going to be a blessing not just to you, but it's going to bless people around you at the same time. There are others that have given up because the miracle hasn't come yet. They say, it hasn't come, it's just not going to come. I just give up. We kind of did that with having kids. Maybe the miracle has already come. You just didn't recognize it. Because you know what? There are still people 2,000 years later still waiting for the miracle of the Messiah. When is it going to happen? It did. You just didn't recognize it. Are our eyes open to accept a different way of the miracle happening than what we think in our mind? It should be. Sometimes what we think we need isn't exactly what we need. It's not the best. And God says, I know you think you need that, but I've got something better. Wait for the better. Quit trying to do things in your own strength. Quit trying to make things happen. Get your eyes off your schedule and your agenda and simply trust God. Say, God, I've already shared my heart. God, you know what I need. And God, now I just put myself in your hands. I'm going to receive it in your timing. And I'm not going to tell you how to do it. But God, I just trust you. At the perfect moment, bring my miracle. God's never late. He's never early. He doesn't want you to settle for second best. He wants to work a miracle in your life. But he has a perfect time for that miracle. The question is, will you wait for him? And will you recognize the miracle when it actually comes? We're going to do a few more songs, continue to worship. And as we're worshiping, I mean, if you just need to get alone with God, you don't have to sing. I mean, if you want to sing the songs with. This is a time for you to connect to God. To just say, God, you promised me something a long time ago, and I haven't seen it yet. But I know, God, you haven't forgotten. I trust you for your timing. Maybe there's something you've been praying for and you don't know why it's coming. It's a time for you just to say, God, I trust you. You know what I need. I trust you, and I will wait patiently. And we already did an illustration. It's hard to wait, isn't it? It's hard to wait. It was hard for us to wait 1 minute. You'll probably have to wait longer than a minute. Maybe not. Maybe today is the time for your miracle. Maybe today is the time you've ordained. And maybe as you're even talking to God, just putting everything in his hands, maybe God will bless you with your miracle this morning. Maybe you'll walk out healed of something that you've been praying for years. Maybe you'll get home and you'll have that job offer for that better job that you've been waiting for. This might be your moment. It might not. But God has a miracle for you at the perfect time. So let's just spend some time with God and say, God, I trust you. I give you my life. I know you can do better with it than I can myself. God, I give you permission to take as long as it takes, because I know when the miracle finally comes, it's going to be greater than anything that I could manufacture on my own. If you want to stand, you stand with us as we worship. If you want to move out of your seat, move somewhere else. If you want to come down to the altars and spend some time with God, this is your moment to connect with God. The miracle of the moment.